Welcome to the Retention Nation podcast, the show for e-commerce brands looking to turn one-time and sometime buyers into lifetime and forever customers. Hosted by Isaac Hyman, an ex-VP of Retention and featured speaker, author, masterclass creator, and founder of High Flyer Digital. Each episode features successful brands, apps, and experts who are sharing cutting-edge, innovative, and proven email SMS retention insights that help them grow their business to the next level profitably. Our mission is to give you the retention strategies you need to unlock profitable, predictable, and scalable revenue from every customer on your list. Let's get started. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Retention Nation podcast, the podcast that teaches brands like yours how to turn those one-time and sometime buyers into lifetime buyers and actually unlock the true revenue potential sitting on your list right now and actually create profitable, predictable, sustainable revenue streams for your business, which is critical to growth, especially in 2024. Before I introduce our guest who will talk all about the retention secrets he has at his brand, he's been doing it for years. I want to always recommend not just to listen to a podcast or hear it, but also read it and study the strategies that you need to kind of get to the next level. So always recommend you get a copy of my free 330-page Ultimate E-commerce Email SMS Playbook. It's available for free on my website. I'm more than happy to get you a hard copy or a digital copy, and it'll teach you the secret strategies that the top brands are using right now to win customers for a lifetime. But again, it's not just enough to read about it or listen to it. You also have to hear it from the brands that are doing it really well. So this is a great segue into my guest, who's actually up against some pretty big brands and doing a great job at it. My guest here today is Mike Abadi from Sunday Citizen. And to give some background into Mike's story here, he was born in Colombia, raised in Mexico, educated in the U.S. He comes from 4 generations of textile industry experts. He began as an investment banker, which is an interesting story already. Co-founder of tailored suits brand Hive and Colony before launching DTC bedding brand Sunday Citizen alongside his wife. And right now they've grown rapidly into an 8-figure e-commerce brand, excelling in several home categories, multiple collections, thousands upon thousands of 5-star reviews sold online in Nordstrom and in their own store in New York City. So thank you for being here, Mike, and jumping on our Retention Nation podcast. So maybe you could start with telling us a little bit about where you are now, how you survived the pandemic, and where the business is currently.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, thanks for having me. Happy to share my story. So yeah, it's been a very interesting last 5 years.
Oh,
We
yeah.
had the highs of COVID and the lows of post-COVID, and these past couple of years we've been sort of trying to find our place in this new normal. And we've learned a lot of lessons along the way. A lot of those learned the hard way, but we're revolving and we're trying to keep growing and making things better. But yeah, for us, we started off. re- we started off right before the pandemic, and we were well positioned once COVID hit. So we were able to basically take advantage of those of those changing dynamics to really grow the business in a way that we didn't even forecast or expect. We went through a lot of inventory issues at the time, not having enough inventory. And well, yes, as a lot of people in the industry, we
Yeah.
quickly went from having not enough inventory problems to having too much inventory problems. And, that forced us to, rethink things under a new perspective. And we made a lot of changes. And even though we're still primarily a D2C company, in the last 2 years, we've sort of um, started branching out into different channels. We started growing our wholesale channel, our marketplace channel, our own brick and mortar space. And, I think that continues to be probably the fastest growing segment of our business at this point.
Wholesale. That
Yes.
was huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty fascinating that you had such a great journey and the timing seemed perfect for COVID. And I think I actually saw an ad recently that said Brooklinen is celebrating their 10-year anniversary, if I'm not mistaken. How do
Right.
you, those home and bedding and all that area is pretty saturated with brands. How do you maintain loyalty when you're up against such big brands? They're almost like the darlings of the DTC market. How do you keep customers loyal to your brand? What's the key?
Yeah, look, competing against them, it has been difficult. Not only did we start 5 years later, but we've been self-funded since the very beginning. A lot of most of these big players that you mentioned have a lot of VC capital behind them. So they were able to go very aggressive on the acquisition side. Whereas for us, we've always been very, very focused on the unit economics, making sure that we're profitable on order number one. So we do have that retention component, that repurchase order, but we try to always stay profitable on the first order. So competing under that dynamic is very challenging. But I think what really saves us is the product. You know, so
Yeah.
whereas a lot of these bigger brands, what they did was sort of introduce, a, the betting concept to the e-commerce space, right? And in a very millennial friendly brand and packaging, the product itself is pretty much the same that you can already
Mm.
buy in West Elm or Macy's or Bloomingdale's, right? At the end of the day, the product itself, yeah, maybe the colors are a little bit more millennial friendly and the packaging and whatever, but at the end of the day, it's pretty much the same product. When we started the company, we we innovated on many fronts. When I started, this was in 2018. Before on the pre-launch, my wife and I and two babies at the time, we actually
Mhm.
moved the family to Shanghai, and we lived in China for 2 years. And the reason behind it is because it's not like we were going to a factory and saying, "Hey, show us your catalog. We want to place an order." But we were actually on the ground with the factories, going from the yarn up on
Wow.
developing a unique products for us. So when you look at our products, I think that you'll find that we're in many ways unique to everything else that you'll find on the market. So on that regard, our biggest retention tool is our product. They come to us and they discover something truly soft and unique. Our value proposition has always been around the fact that bedding is not sup it's, yeah, okay, it's great if it's a decorative piece as well, but at the end of the day, it should be comfort as a first priority, second priority, and third priority. Like, it's all about comfort, coziness, and softness. So every single product that we develop, whether, we started off with throw blankets. When we first started in 2019, it was only throw blankets. Um, and our value proposition at the time is that these were blankets that were extremely soft, but at the same time, easy care and machine washable, right? That was our original
Mhm.
product value prop. And we've evolved very quickly since then into all the spaces for the home, including the sheets, comforters, pillows, loungewear, robes, bath. But every single item that we've added to the collection has maintained that original value proposition of extreme softness and easy care, right? So customers already know that whatever they're buying from us, whether it's a comforter or the sheets, they'll know that they already trust us and know that it'll probably be the softest in that category that they've experienced up until that moment. So that really is what keeps people coming back. That unique softness and unique comfort that we bring. And so I do believe that our eh, again, like, the product is our biggest retention tool,
Mhm.
and we see that with very high repurchase rates. So we've done like comparables with other industry players and trying to compare, and I think we're probably one of the highest brands in the bedding space in terms of repurchase rates. And what's actually interesting is to see that people are coming back for the same exact product. So if they bought a comforter,
Mm.
they come back for a comforter. They bought a throw, they come back for a throw. And that really just speaks to the discovery aspect, right? Where maybe they'll buy a comforter for their room and they love it so much, then they'll buy more for the rest of the rooms, right? Or they'll buy a throw and they like it so much and they'll buy another two or three to gift to their families, right? So we see a lot of this dynamic of coming back for the same thing, which just speaks to the quality and that wow effect that the products have on people, and you see it with the reviews. You just go through all of our reviews, and it's in a way they're surprised at how soft it is and how cozy it is.
Yeah, it's amazing how you started from like you said, from the yarn level, right, to then
Yes.
crafting it up. Seems like product is the tip of the spear when it comes to keeping customers loyal, right?
It's a tip of the spear. I think anybody that's selling a commodity or a commoditized product at this point,
Yeah,
with little differentiating aspects to it, is going to struggle, or is probably struggling, right?
right.
And in our case, we do see a lot of people trying to go after the same concept, so that also keeps us on our toes, making sure that we're
Yep.
consistently innovating, consistently coming up with something softer, something better. For example, with our bed sheets, right now we have incredibly soft bed sheets, and we're actually preparing to launch a new collection this fall that will make our old bed sheets feel like sandpaper of how drastically softer they're going to be. So I think that's part of it, that we have to constantly continue to innovate
Yeah.
and outbeat ourselves in product.
That's very important, super important. And considering you were founded in 2019 and then the pandemic hit, you were probably and then everyone started buying home goods, home decor and things like that. You're probably inundated with all these one-time buyers that just came in, saw your products, swore by it, and constantly tried to buy more. But then also brands that found those customers to be one and done, right? One and done buyers. How have you navigated that, and how has your repeat purchase rate been post COVID, and what's it doing now?
So our repeat rate, or let's say we like to measure the repurchase rate, like what percentage of our customers buy from us within, let's say, 6 months, and it's actually
Mhm.
held quite quite steady, even in the post-COVID era. So we've actually been able to maintain that pretty well. So I think that the retention part has maintained itself pretty steady. If anything, it's actually improved. I think the part that hit us more was on the acquisition side, right? So definitely
Mm,
acquisition today is not even close to what acquisition was during those early years, which only just highlights the importance of the retention component, right?
yeah,
So whereas before, retention might have been a nice to have, now it's a must have, right? Like, I think any product, any brand that doesn't have a strong repurchase rate, I think they'll suffer in this environment,
yeah,
and I get a lot of entrepreneurs who are starting, and they reach out to me with product ideas, and in the e-commerce space, and I think that that's basically the number one thing I tell them, right? Like, at the end of the day, I think if they're going to start a new brand today, making sure that they're coming out with a product that is differentiated and then has like a loyalty component to it, because anything that's too commoditized will be difficult to launch in this environment. Back then, 5-10 years ago, I think it was doable, given the easier acquisition
yeah.
dynamics, right? But I think in this environment, you have to rely on that repeat customer.
Yeah, you mentioned on the Jay Davis show that brands need to start out by being retention focused. Like you have to make some assumptions probably that say they're going to buy two, three, four, 10 times, as opposed to
Correct.
just being acquisition focused. So how have you've embodied that, it seems, in everything you're doing since 2019, even to now, right?
Right, and even with my previous brand, Hive and Colony, that was the premise of the whole
Mm,
business, right? Because with the suits, we were selling tailor-made suits, right? And the whole idea behind it was that once we were able to crack a customer's measurements and get his fit right, uh, we would monopolize that customer on with their suits and shirts, right? So, and this started all the way back when I was in investment banking. I would always
mm,
see, like, my the MDs at the company, or the VPs that would have like their shirt guy in Hong Kong that basically had their measurements pat down, and all they would do is just reorder, like they wouldn't even have to think about it, right? Like unless they gained a lot of weight or whatever, it was just automatic, right? So I embodied that. That was the premise of the previous business. So I came into this business with that already in mind as being the
Yeah.
backbone of any product company.
Yeah, I had a brief stint at Merrill Lynch back when it was just a standalone, and yeah, these MDs had it on speed dial. Their tailors
Exactly.
and their staff. So good call. But now, as you're transitioning into wholesale, one would think, and again, I work with a lot of retailers who sell other people's brands. I've sat in with Nordstrom and Saks and things like that. But how do you manage that same loyalty, knowing that there's a brand now selling your product who may or may not excel at retention or may promote other products? How do you maintain that loyalty to the customer and to the end user?
So, look, I think in a way, the wholesale component has helped, um, and like there's a lot of spillover effect from the D2C business into the wholesale, but there's also a lot of spillover from the wholesale business into the D2C. So
Mm,
I I was recently you know for us it's difficult to measure exactly because we don't get a lot of the data, but
yeah.
we do know anecdotally that a lot of the customers that we're getting on our website discovered us by first purchasing on Nordstrom.com or in Bloomingdale's, and then they
Mm,
came to us, right? So as an acquisition channel, I think there's definitely, I guess it's difficult to quantify, but there is definitely something there. And I think at the end of the day, what we try, once people the important thing is for people to discover our softness, experience our product, and from then on they'll continue to buy in whatever's easiest for them, right? And whatever is more convenient,
mm,
if they're already buying in if they're doing their wedding registry in Bloomingdale's, and they'll include us there, right? If they're
mhm.
already in the shopping mall, and they stumble into our product in Macy's, then sure, just buy it from there. But the important thing is that they experience a product, and then it has to become a philosophy of you just have to be wherever it's most convenient for that particular customer, and every customer will have their preference.
Yeah, I feel customers loyal to convenience at the end of the day, and they want to
Exactly.
buy wherever it's easier. Um, which is interesting though, because at the same time, from what I read about Sunday Citizen, it looks like you were on Amazon at some point, but then you decided not to sell there. Different story.
Yes, yeah, when we started off the business back in 2019, we actually had we were completely parallel in Amazon and on Shopify, and we pretty much
Mm,
had the same budgets, the same inventory, everything was almost the same. And what we started to see was that even though the acquisition costs were a little bit lower on Amazon, the just the lifetime value of those customers was,
mm,
first of all, the average order values were significantly less.
mm,
And second of all, we just didn't see that repurchase rate. Uh, and it was like about 6 months in that I started to see that trend, and I just said, what, we have to stop Amazon and go all in on Shopify, because I just saw that the dynamics didn't make sense. So
yeah,
since then we've been strictly on Shopify. It's been a little bit of a dilemma for us, of whether to go back into Amazon or not, because at the end of the day, the moment you start being on Amazon, you lose a lot of that control, right? A lot of that,
yeah,
connection with a customer, right? And it's difficult to know to what point they're going to cannibalize
yeah,
our online our Shopify sales, right? But at the same time, going back to what I just mentioned, is you have to be wherever it's more convenient for the customer, right? So
yeah.
I do think we're gonna be end up going back to Amazon soon. Uh, Maybe not with a full collection, but with certain products, just to make sure that we have that exposure as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting you said that. That probably brands want to kind of have some selection there, not their huge selection, and but this time do it a little smarter. Now that it's become. Have
Correct.
you ever worried about copycats also, or counterfeiters and things like that at the time at Amazon? Or
Yeah,
is that,
yeah, we have. I mean,
yeah,
we're already seeing it. Like we have great
oh,
relationships with our factories in and the factories basically have at many times said, hey, this we saw somebody coming in request with your sample requesting a quote. We know that they're working with this other so we know it's already happening.
yeah,
I guess it's copying is the biggest form of flattery in a way, but that's what
right,
I said. We have to stay on our. It forces us to stay on our toes in terms of innovation, right? So that's
yeah,
why the product that worked for us a year ago is not necessarily the product that will work for us in 2 years, right? So it's
yeah.
it's kept us very very involved on the product development side, and we're still very involved in the coming up with new yarns, with new fabric blends, and that's what's gonna save us from that competition.
hmm Great. I mean, it seems like you've traveled to China, you've sitting on the yarning factories locations, and you're born in Colombia, raised in Mexico. It seems like you've been a pretty big world traveler. How have those experiences and investment banking on top of that, how have those experiences helped get to understand your customer a little bit more? Has it really helped you know their just understand people one to one level, or has it been like, hasn't really helped? It's just good to have as a story.
Yeah, look, I think getting exposure to you know the way people around the world do things, buy things is very you're always getting ideas from different things. Like for
Yeah.
example, we recently launched um, like a big hooded blanket, which is inspired by a product that's very common in Colombia that they call the ruana, which is like this again, just like a blanket that you can wear. And we came up with that version, inspired by this Colombian item. Um, so I definitely I think there's that every culture, every country has things to teach you. On In China specifically, when it comes to e-commerce, in many ways they are light years away ahead from us. It
Wow.
was I've never experienced selling in China as in e-commerce, but as a consumer in China, it was I felt you know living in China and then coming back to the US, I felt like going back in many ways in terms of my e-commerce
Wow.
experience. Like e-commerce there
Mhm.
is so easy, so frictionless. They have this app called WeChat where you do product discovery, product purchases, customer service, all within the same app. Most
Mm.
of I would say 99% of my orders would arrive to my house that same day. It was crazy, yeah. So like the in terms of things like social commerce, like live selling, things like that, they started that in China many years before we did. So for me, it was very interesting to see where e-commerce will probably eventually head here in the US.
Wow.
And it already is. You see it with TikTok in terms of like social
Yep.
selling, things like that, that it's starting to um, 2-day prime. So I think and in terms of penetration, e-commerce penetration rate, I think here in the US we're like in the mid-teens, whereas in China I think it's like high 30s, 40. It's like very high in China, much higher than
Wow.
here. Yeah,
Wow. We still have far to go. I guess we never hear that being reported.
yes,
Heard of WeChat, but it seems like it's that those traveling experiences also informed your e-commerce expertise and how you want to differentiate your store, I'm sure. So
absolutely.
and since I'm Colombian, also as I mentioned before, we got on. That's interesting. Ariano, right? The sweater shawl. Is that the one that Bruno
The-
from Encanto was wearing, or something like that?
exactly. Yes.
That's the
Yes.
one. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got to get from my relatives then.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
So along those lines, considering you're always on the cutting edge of innovation and always trying to get new products to market, building on the ones that have been successful, are you seeing different retention rates per product, such as are sheets a different retention than the shawls or the blankets or the throw products, or what are you seeing on that end?
Yeah, we definitely see different retention rates across the different categories.
Yeah.
We've struggled in some categories, right? Like for example, our wearables line I think still has a lot of potential in
Mm,
terms of the size of the business, but it's we haven't been as successful with that as we have on the betting side. Also,
mhm,
we've struggled a little bit in terms of the cross category. You know, like I said before, most of our purchases are they buy a comforter, they can buy back for the same thing, right? So I think there's still a lot of work for us to do in getting people exposed in cross categories, right? They maybe buy a blanket from you, but then how to get them to buy your towels as well, right? So I think
yeah.
there's a lot of opportunity there as well. But yeah, I think for us, what we're sort of betting on is this trust that customers build on our commitment to softness and comfort, right? So they should know that, oh, if their comforter and sheets were so soft, we can also expect that their robes are going to be very soft or their towels are going to be very soft. So I think as
Yeah.
long as you have that strong brand identity, then it gives people confidence to jump across the different categories, no?
Yeah, it seems like the upsell is locked in, right? They're buying
Yeah,
one item and buying more of it for different rooms, different gifts. But the cross sell is always sometimes a challenge. I could definitely see that
yeah,
for almost any brand. But it
yeah.
seems like you understand that the acquisition comes from just you're getting the same customer to buy more often. That's kind of your acquisition play, if you will. You're seeing that more and more,
Correct.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I know that you mentioned that you're going back to retention focused brand here. Is there something on your retention roadmap or loyalty roadmap that you wish you could try? It's on your wish list to try, or maybe you want to dust something off that you tried back in 2019 that say, hey, let's give it another visit. Anything on that roadmap or wish list for this year that you wanted to kind of dive into?
Um, I think that for us, we're a brand that loves trying everything, and we test and see if it sticks or not, and so we've gone through all these different types of tools and channels and things like that. Uh, there's definitely I think that something that I know there's a lot of potential is for us to continue expanding on our brick and mortar
Mm,
side of the business and I see that as a retention play in many ways, right? Having that as a place where people can go back and continue to discover your brand, continue to discover your new products, new collections. I think that there's a lot
mm.
there. Um, we haven't really cracked the code on that completely, but I think there's a lot of potential with that in itself. Um, and then and like I said, we are at this point trying to focus a lot on new categories, and I
Mhm.
think the real focus on the for the retention team will be how to get people to test us out in each of these
Yep.
categories, right? Like we want to get into, for example, we're looking into getting into baby products. We want to strengthen our bath. We want to strengthen our loungewear. So I think the retention strategy for the next couple of years is going to be a lot on that, how to cross sell across the different categories.
Yeah, that's a huge opportunity. But you mentioned also the brick and mortar side. I was VP of retention at some nine-figure brands that had like one store, in New York City, and they found that buying in store and online, their omni-channel strategy helped keep customers loyal much more than just an online customer. So, love that initiative that you're going in that direction. I think that could be a very fascinating direction.
Yeah. Look, I think it's challenging, when you have
Yep.
on the in the in the online world, everything is trackable, everything,
Yeah.
right? And we know we can have very accurate statistics on different funnels, different channels, different A/B test this. And when it comes with the with the brick and mortar stores, it becomes more difficult to track.
Yeah.
Attribution becomes more difficult, and all. So it's for us. It's been a challenge to understand exactly what type of dynamics are happening. Like, are they seeing us in Soho and then buying online? To what extent? Or maybe they're
Yeah.
discovering us on Instagram. Then they come maybe just to confirm the softness, touch it, and then they eventually buy again, right? So that dynamic is still something that we're struggling to really pinpoint and understand
Yeah.
fully. But there's definitely something there, right? Especially in a brand like us, which is so tactile, right? Like in the day we're selling is softness, right? And there's only so much that you
Mhm.
can do with a picture or a video. So that in real life experience becomes extremely important, and that's something
Yeah.
that I also learned with my suit business, right? Because with my suit business, I actually started online only, and I was forced into the offline world because, again, people, when they're buying suits, they wanted to touch the fabrics, they wanted to understand
Uh-huh.
the different, it became a necessity for me in that business. And I think in this business it's less of a necessity, but I think it's definitely powerful.
Yeah, good call out. I mean, they gotta touch it, feel it sometimes, and actually, that helps with retention in general. So, I know we're about at time. I want to respect your time. So, any final thoughts, ideas, or tips you would have for an e-commerce brand that really wants to get retention focused, as you said, this year?
Yeah, look, I think for me is focus on the product. I think the
Yes.
product
Yeah.
is your biggest marketing tool, your biggest retention tool. And if you have a great product, the rest will become easier. If you have an inferior product or an average product, then everything will be hard. So I think focusing on product has to be at the center of any D2C company nowadays, I think.
Smart. Yep. The product is everything. It's tip of the spear. It's how you get
Yeah.
customers to keep trusting you, keep buying. Really huge. Well, thanks for being with us, Mike. It's been great hearing your story. I'm sure I have a lot more questions to ask about your background in Colombia and where you're going with Sunday Citizen, but um, I hope you really enjoyed your time on the podcast and really was great hearing the background. I'm excited to see where you guys are going this year and beyond.
Thank you. Thank you. We'd love to stay in touch.
For
Thanks for
sure.
having me.
So thank you for joining us on another episode of the Retention Nation podcast with my guest, Mike Abadi from Sunday Citizen, who's teaching you guys everything you need to know about retention from his perspective. The product is everything for his DTC brand. So if you invest in it, that's going to help you be successful this year. Thank you again for joining. I'm Isaac Hyman, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. I will see you on the next one. Thanks for listening to the Retention Nation podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe and join our Retention Nation Facebook group. If you want to put this week's retention strategy into action within minutes, all done for you by our expert email, SMS, and retention team, you can go to highflyerdigital.com/book for a free 15-minute chat with myself and my team. It's time to turn those one-time and sometime buyers on your list into lifetime buyers and unlock the revenue you deserve. Your brand is worth it, and your customers will thank you for it. Until next week, I'm Isaac Hyman, wishing you a successful and profitable week.